Okay, Kathleen Allen. I know you're there, Kathleen. Tom Chapa. Heather Del Conte.
Here.
Pamela Dowd.
Here.
Lisa Glidden. James McKenzie.
Here.
Linda Serino.
Here.
Zeta Olson.
Here.
At this time, I will turn it over to the Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. I just want to start by thanking everyone for gathering again this afternoon, especially on a Friday. I think it shows our dedication, the board's and the administration's dedication to making sure that we get this right, and our experts' support in helping us do that. So thank you very much. I wanted to give just a little bit of background as to what brought us here today. I left the meeting Tuesday night feeling very unsettled about the language in the remediation resolution. I regretted that I didn't offer an amendment or at least table the whole vote until we, as a board, had more time to vet the action items and their implications. Specifically, I thought a lot about Jim's very valid concerns regarding the language surrounding the use of general funds. It was unclear to me why the language couldn't and shouldn't reflect that which was originally used in the bond resolution regarding the issue. So, and just as background for the validity of being here today, for board members who are unaware, Robert's Rules does offer a remedy for members of a body who are part of a majority decision. So in this case, those of us who voted in the affirmative for the resolution, to amend a resolution after a vote has been made. The amendment proposal must, however, be made prior to the resolution being acted upon, and as long as members have it in hand prior to a meeting, requires a simple majority vote. If passed, the resolution would be changed to reflect the amended language. As a board, we currently find ourselves in the very uncoveted position of managing not only an education system during a pandemic, not only a very significant capital project during a pandemic, but now the unexpected added frustration and expense of dealing with remnants of another generation's careless actions, whether they were intentional or inadvertent. We must be sure that we are deliberate with our response and direct with our intentions. I don't think any of us want to see this issue in any way, shape, or form negatively impact the day-to-day operations of this district or the quality of education we are able to provide current and future students by being cavalier about how we plan to proceed. As such, I would like to suggest that we amend the general fund language in the resolution voted upon on Tuesday for the remediation project to ensure that only capital project or state aid dollars are ultimately used to cover these unanticipated expenses. But for the capital project, we would not have this nearly $6 million emergency soil remediation to deal with on our watch. Therefore, I feel very strongly that our general fund should only be used as a temporary funding source as needed, with the absolute intent to pay back monies back into that fund from the bonding proceeds. Therefore, I propose and urge the acceptance of the following amendment. The board hereby authorize the expenditure of up to a maximum amount not to exceed $5,600,000, which is the maximum estimated amount to complete the emergency remedial work as determined by the architect and construction manager. The funding source for the project will be from the proceeds of the bond resolution approved by the Board of Education on October 16th, 2018, and approved by the voters on December 18th, 2018, in addition to New York State building aid. General fund balance may only be used on a temporary basis as approved in advance by the board and must be restored in full by the proceeds from the bond. Is there a second for this amendment?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Linda. And so now we can discuss it. Does anybody have anything to add or questions they may want to ask our lawyers, or maybe our lawyers want to put their own input in on it?
Heather, so we're not really rescinding the original, we're just putting an addendum on it.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways you can approach this, but to amend it is the easiest for our circumstances now.
And can I ask how, if we passed it the other night, yet it hasn't been sent into SED, why?
I'm not sure what their timing was, but I think it was early next week.
Gotcha. I felt a little weird about coming back for this. It seemed out of the ordinary and not a normal practice. Although I do understand in Robert's rules, this is absolutely doable. And we are in very strange times right now. So, I mean, one of the reasons I agreed for the meeting was because I didn't feel comfortable having a discussion via email, number one. I guess I don't understand why we couldn't have just done let this go and then in a couple of weeks addressed it, you know, for this particular project and any future. Could we determine it as a policy to always have that wording in, so that we're not found in this predicament again, that you know, anytime that it's, you know, unless it's what we normally use general fund for, you know, if it's used for capital project reasons, it always needs to be paid back. I'm concerned that we're going to look funny in SED eyes. And I also have concerns because I think there was some hesitation on pulling, you know, our whole apprenticeship, you know, we're waiving that. We didn't have any public discussion about that. I regret that myself because I would hope that we would try to avoid waiving that requirement in the future.
So Pam,
I'm always in favor of. I know it's probably that's not what we're discussing. Sorry.
Yeah, we have to keep it on the amendment discussion.
All right, I'm good.
Okay.
Heather, my connection cut out. What was that you were reading? Was that drafted by you or an attorney?
No, this is my proposed amendment. And I was just giving background, Kathleen, as to why I felt it important to make the amendment.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So
this, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So this is Paul Reichel. I'm the district's bond counsel. I'm with Bond Shenick King. So the way I read this, the original resolution authorized or permitted the use of general fund monies if needed to pay for project costs. And what we're trying to do now is, I guess, two things. Number one is, if general fund money is to be used, number one, require that prior board approval be obtained. And then number two, require that the general fund be reimbursed from bond proceeds.
Yes.
So it's kind of two things. So prior board's got to approve it first, and then the fund has to be reimbursed.
Yes.
Yep. And I agree with this approach, except, you know, we certainly want to make sure that the general fund gets reimbursed. We might be tying our hands a little bit if we require that the board approve it before any general fund expenditure be made, because there could be unexpected events that require bills to be paid, and to have to call a board meeting to do that just might put the district in a tough spot. As long as the money has to be reimbursed, does that accomplish the objective?
So the two different things, though, it's the to take the funds out to begin with, you need board approval.
Right.
So, you know, especially now, we're looking at really tight funds in, you know, when it comes to our day-to-day operations. I don't see that trend changing anytime soon. And I just think it's really important that we be very, very cautious. We have plenty of money bonded to pay for this project. The ramifications is that we have to take some things out of our project. That's just the case. But I think there is a commitment from this board to want to make sure that the board does maintain some control over those general funds and that they aren't just sent towards this project willy-nilly.
Okay. So the bond money will always be used to reimburse the general fund, and it's that additional requirement for advanced prior board approval. And the bond resolution, by the way, does authorize, the board already authorized the use of general fund monies and the reimbursement from bond proceeds. And so we're just clarifying that it has to happen before the fact.
Right. So you're speaking to the bond resolution. This resolution we passed for the soil remediation actually had much looser language about the general fund. So we're just going to tighten that language up. And if it's better to mimic the bond resolution language, I think that there would be buying into that too. I'd still like to see the board having some approval requirements, but that's obviously.
No, I don't think mimicking the bond resolution rather is the way to go, because that's permissive. It allows you to, but what you want to do is something a little bit more than what's in the bond resolution. So whatever the board decides in terms of the process for accessing the general fund, we should state it in this resolution and not rely on the bond resolution.
Okay.
So that's all. I just wanted to point out the difference between the bond resolution and this one.
Paul, this is Tom Buckle. I have I want to reaffirm a threshold question because I think that drives this. And that threshold question is this, that there's no prohibition against using the bond proceeds to pay for this particular emergency project.
Oh, that's correct. That's right. I sent Nancy Squares an email just to confirm that before.
So with that threshold issue decided, I'll weigh in and like you, I mean, as counsel, my role is not, was not, and remains not to make a policy recommendation, is to express my opinion as what's legal, what's not. On the other hand, I've had for some lawyers, the unique situation of sitting where you are sitting. So I've seen and experienced the things that you fear, and that is that general authorization that everyone says it's focused on one small thing, and then somewhere down the line you see, well, it was used, the general funds were used for something that may have been related, but not quite, and it can get out of control. And I've seen it not only in the local governments I served, I've seen it in some of the school districts around here. So I really do. Jim, I think your point was well taken. Tuesday, it was not my role to express a policy decision, but I get it. And I think that from a legal perspective now, the threshold issue is you can use these proceeds. The practical issue is there remains more than sufficient bond proceeds to pay for this so that the state is satisfied that there's available money. In contrast to the usual situation where an emergency occurs, you don't have a pool of bond money available. You've got an emergency and you're going to the state for aid. So you do then say the possible sorts are all these things. Here you got the money. And there's lots of it, even though you might have to make an alteration to the project in a later phase. So from a legal standpoint, this can be done. I do not believe that there's any requirement from the state that you must save general funds. I think that there was a sense of caution that you want to make the broadest statement possible to the state so as not to cause any questions or delays. On the other hand, it's my job or our job as the independent counsels and professionals here to be advocates for you and make sure the state understands there's plenty of bond proceeds available. We will make it happen and to satisfy the state that way. That's our job. So I commend you for doing this, or at least raising the issue from a legal standpoint. This is legal And from a policy standpoint, I apologize, it's prudent.
So I'll weigh in if everyone doesn't mind. The resolution that we drafted says that the funding source of the project will be the bond proceeds. That was what it said. And then it says and/or unassigned general fund balance and/or New York State building aid. And as Tom said a moment ago, that's to give you the flexibility for cash flow purposes, et cetera. I understand the board's idea of restricting it. And if you want to do that, I had sent a resolution, an amendment of this resolution to Mathis earlier in advance of the meeting. You could just add a sentence to that paragraph 3, which says any funds expended from the general fund for the project shall be reimbursed from the bond proceeds. And that would require that. And you could, I didn't have the concept of prior board authorization because that typically is not recommended because you don't meet. And if you have a cash flow problem, you may need to spend money and do something and then do it. The board does want to impose that. You could say any funds expended from the general fund shall only be done with prior board approval and then shall be reimbursed to the, by bond proceeds. And you could add that to the resolution and that would be the recommendation on the form. And I could send that to Mathis and Nancy and you could act on that at your next meeting or today. I would incorporate it into the document that we have prepared for you. So it's all in one resolution.
Joe, this is an amendment to the original resolution. So honestly, it would just superimpose over the language that is already there. It would still be one resolution. We're not doing an additional resolution. Does that make sense?
It does, but I guess just form. I would do it the way I've said it, as opposed to the way you've worded it. But however you want to go about it, it's up to the board.
Yeah, it's really how the board wants to. The word "shall" I think leaves open to an interpretation. I think what I'm trying to say is I would like to make sure that this happens going forward because this is distinct and different from your average remediation issue that happens because you happen to stumble upon it in the regular course of events. This is something that really came from our capital project. And if we hadn't started a capital project, we wouldn't have the situation. So I really feel like it has to come from the capital money. Jim and Tom, did you have stuff to say?
Actually, I forgot. Tom had his hand up a while ago, so I do have a couple of things. But Tom, would you like to go first?
Well, mine was relative to the legal point. Initially, we were when the initial resolution was put, it felt like to amend it, to add to it, was going to complicate some sort of approval with SED. But if that is not the case, then I'm fine with it. But that was the feeling I got at the meeting, that if we added that language, we went to the point of saying that if we needed approval by the board or whatever it was, there would be a problematic with SED. That's not the case.
Are you right? Joe, did
Yes.
you have a question?
My question, this is not going to complicate any kind of approval with SED or anything.
Right. Well,
Could people turn their mics off except for the person talking because I'm having trouble catching things?
can you hear us? Can you hear me? Board, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so in terms of the complication of the application, generally what happens from what I am told with these situations is the state ed department likes to see that you have a good, strong cash flow, right? So they want to see a couple of things. First of all, where are you going to get the money from? And so the intent of the language that was put in the original resolution was to demonstrate that we do have a very strong cash flow. Our first place was to get money from the capital project to phase back. The second phase was to be able to go and get monies from the general fund if necessary, and or use the money from New York State aid that comes in. So that was the strong, robust message that we were giving to the state in our application. Now, it does not require that you put in information around general fund. Now, what we need to do is, once we turn it in, The state could look at it and say, oh, you guys are good, we're fine. Or they could come back and say, well, we need you to kind of add a little bit more to this. We're not sure until we go and apply for it. I will tell you that in most of those cases, people are different than the district is. Most districts who apply for emergency funds, they use their general funds because they don't have a $63 million capital improvement project like we have, right, going on. So they don't have another source to pull it from. But so most applications, you will see that on there. However, again, going back to answer your question, Tom, we're not certain what the state will do. And if the state comes back and says, push it back and you need to go back, then we would have to come back to you all and say, can we reconsider, basically. So we'll have to see, time will tell. It could go either way, because they could say, you're good, let's go. Or they could say, go back and check again. So I hope I answered your question, Tom.
It does. The other point, though, I want to bring up, referring to Tom and Joe, as far as handcuffing us, I think in any type of situation, if emergency funds were needed, that we'd be able to, much like we would do in the capital committee, when we're facilities committee, if something needs to be done, we can get in touch with people rapidly in order to make those decisions. So I don't think it would really be handcuffing us to the next meeting. I think we'd have that flexibility to be able to make that.
And Tom, to be sure, I don't either, as a matter of law or as a matter of policy. I think you're perfectly capable of stepping forward and acting quickly if needed. So.
Thank you.
So I'll follow up directly with that, because the board has already approved the ability of the facilities committee to work with the leadership superintendent to make anything under $50,000. They can just make that decision for the board. We did ask recently, because as Heather said, things are tight. It's a difficult situation, that anything over $50,000 we'd want to bring before the board. And that if we needed to meet an emergency meeting, as we are today, that we'd be willing to do that. But we did cut a threshold, so Joe, talking about it, your idea of having pre-approval, we've already talked about a way to minimize the impact by using the facilities committee under anything of $50,000. I fully agree. I do think when we talk about the cash flow, the idea of having money up front, we have more than $500,000 of our contingency already bonded. So we do have that money to show the state in good faith, and we can spend that as our contractors and engineers right now say, hey, I'm doing your design, please pay me. We have that ability to do that. And Joe, to go to your, what you had said about having the word shall in there, shall means may. And to be honest with you, up until recently, I was actually very confused about that myself. I didn't know I was, because everything I've learned, it means shall is you're going to do it. But I've recently learned that the Supreme Court in 1995 declared that shall means may. It was a case of a Colombian national who got hurt by an American company down in Colombia. And they decided that shall means may. So since that 95 U.S. Supreme Court decision, if we want to get to the technical legal aspect, which again, I was wrong about for the longest time, if we want it to happen, we have to put must.
Okay, is there any other input or discussion or input that our experts want to make before we will do this and vote on it?
I guess I'm sorry.
Joe,
the only thing I was going to suggest was, based on Jim's explanation of the facilities committee having authority up to $50,000, do you want to include that in your resolution so that you could proceed, you would say on a temporary basis as approved in advance by the facility committee up to $50,000 and the full board, over that amount?
It won't hurt that application to say that on there, or the resolution to say it. I think it sounds pretty good to put that in there. It just explains ahead of time that you have that cash flow.
Jim, do we have to make official motions for amendments, or is this a working document as we talk under Robert's rules?
Yeah, under Robert's rules, your motion is a primary motion and is amendable, but it would have to have somebody propose an amendment, have it seconded, vote on that amendment, which would change the language of your motion. Then can continue on discussion or move the question.
Okay, that's what I thought. So Pam, are you making a motion to follow Joe's recommendation for adding those specifics into that line?
Yes, I would make that motion, and I would also like to change the word shall to must or will.
We have must already in the original amendment.
Okay,
We're good.
thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're just talking about changing the specifics of the approval process.
Facilities committee, that yes, please.
Okay,
I will
is there a
make that-
second for that amendment to the amendment? Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, is there discussion on Pam's motion, which is actually Joe Shields' recommendation to put specific language in about the approval process for the board in regards to using general fund? Okay, then we'll just do, Karen, can you do a roll call vote? And remember, this is on specifically the Joe Shields' recommendation, which was Pam's amendment to the amendment. Jim, did you have something to say?
Well, it only just came to me here, and this is where maybe Joe or Tom can help with this. So, and I don't have it in front of me, but our previous resolution says that any change order that is $50,000 or more on the project. Okay, that's probably answering my question. It was on that project, which since this is an emerging project, it's a new project.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm answering thank you.
Okay, Karen, can you do a roll call vote? And this is again on the specific language being put into this amendment on the approval process.
Yep. Kathleen Allen,
Yes.
Tom Chapa,
Yes.
Heather Del Conte,
Yes.
Pamela Dowd,
Yes.
Lisa Glidden, oops, sorry, James McKenzie,
Yes.
and Linda Serena.
Yes.
The resolution has passed 6-0.
Okay, so now we go back to the original amendment, now amended with that piece in it. Is there any more discussion on the changes that we are proposing?
I just have a quick question. Is this going to harm anything in the future? I mean, I understand. I'm thinking the purpose in this is so that it's not coming out of the general fund, taking away from instruction and our typical yearly costs, correct? So is this going to harm anything in the future for a future board? Because now we're talking, as what was stated the other day, 10, 15 years. That's it. That's my question. Is it going to harm anything?
Jim?
So I was actually thinking about this question earlier today because I was thinking back to our Tuesday meeting. This project is planned to be bid out, the job be done in 8 weeks' time, and we're hoping before the snow melts. So really, all of the ramifications here deal with this board. This project in its entirety is this board, except for the fact that we're bonding against future parts of the project. So that's what, we're talking about. This particular resolution probably being done and everybody being paid for it for the time to get soon will be done by springtime.
But we are emphatically saying by doing this, that as we go forward in this plan, this capital plan, that we are limiting, the scope of it because we have this issue and we're going to take care of it with capital money, capital project money.
So Tom Buckle had raised his hand. He put his hand up when I was asking a question. Tom, is there something you wanted to say?
Well, let me agree with Jim, first of all, but qualify it is that hypothetically, if this particular emergency construction lasted 2 years and the composition of the board changed, this resolution remains in effect. But as Jim noted, from a practical standpoint, that's not going to happen. Pam asked earlier if this becomes the policy of the board in all situations, and the answer is no. This is a resolution that applies to this particular emergency at this particular time. Should the board make this a policy later? That's a discussion for another day. And certainly there's going to be some vigorous, pushback about that. But that's the answer. So the short answer is no. You're not tying the hands of the school, the district, the board, its administrations. You're simply declaring how this project shall be administered and paid for.
Thank you, Tom.
Joe, did you have something to add?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw your hand go up. Okay,
No.
Is there any other discussion before we take a vote? Okay, then Karen, can you please roll call vote?
Roll call. Kathleen Allen,
Yes.
Tom Chapa,
Yes.
Heather Del Conte,
Yes.
Pamela Dowd,
Yes.
James McKenzie,
Yes.
Linda Serena.
Yes.
Resolution has passed 6-0.
Okay, my understanding, and Jim, please correct me, or Tom or Joe, that when we amend an already voted upon resolution in this manner, we don't have to go again and vote on it as amended. Is that correct? It's automatic.
That's my understanding of Robert's rules. If you're going to amend a previously passed resolution, that the motion and second has a discussion. And then if it receives a majority vote because it was announced beforehand, then it replaces or edits the original motion. And this is the one that stands, and we're done.
Okay. Then it looks like we're done. I want to thank everybody again for coming back in on a Friday and doing this. I really appreciate the conversation, and I think I'm going to sleep better tonight. So thank you.
Heather, thank you for your patience in working with me to get to some comfort level throughout this process.
We are in uncharted territory right now as a board, and I really appreciate this team. So have a great weekend, everybody. We need a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Okay, Linda first, second.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, have a good weekend, everybody.
Everybody have a good weekend. Thank you all.